Environmental Council with the Patriot Coalition. I want to thank you all for making it to this important presentation on sustainable development, and we will be focusing on Kansas. The issues that we're going to cover, first, we're going to talk about the questions you should consider about sustainable development. We want to talk about the history of sustainable development in Kansas, the red flag words and entities that you need to look out for, documents that you need to secure to do a sustainable development investigation, and questions to ask your public servants regarding sustainable development. In terms of Kansas, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of it in Kansas. We're going to talk about organizations that are promoting it in Kansas, government agencies that are promoting sustainable development in Kansas, politicians that are promoting it, and also sustainable development organizations. The questions that you need to ask as we go through this presentation are, what is sustainable development? Is it real, or is it a conspiracy theory? Who's behind sustainable development? What is sustainable development's ultimate objective? Who is behind sustainable development in the United States? And is sustainable development going on in Kansas? Organizations promoting sustainable development will include the government entities, politicians, sustainable development organizations, non-governmental, non-profit organizations, or NGOs, and private for-profit organizations. Now we're going to run through some definitions and concepts related to sustainable development. Sustainable development is a term of art for a political theory. It holds that the social economic development must be tied to the environment, and that environmental restoration and preservation is the one and only means of maintaining mankind in balance with itself and the rest of nature. All development under this theory must be conducted such that nature is restored and sustained in its primordial state. Sustainable development is from the perspective of nature first, not mankind. Sustainable development is the theory. Agenda 21 is the action plan by which sustainable development will be implemented. This is the cover of the Earth Summit Agenda 21 booklet put out by the United Nations. Core concepts. Nature's perspective is sustainable development. From man's perspective, it's subsistence development. And subsistence is where we're managing to stay alive, especially when there's barely enough food or money for survival. A term of art is a word or a phrase that has a special meaning in a particular context. The classification of a word or phrase as a term of art can have a legal consequence. Definition. The classical definition of sustainable development is sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that comes from the World Commission on Environment, Our Common Earth. Sustainable development, regionalism. This is the large-scale version of the U.S. adoption of modern regionalism. Is a federally imposed extra-constitutional layer of government covering the entire nation. We're going to discuss theory. Modern sustainability contains three aspects known as the 3 E's: ecology or environment, economy, and equity. For a holistic view of sustainable living, all three aspects must be considered when taking decisions and taking action towards a better future. The core is and main focus is on the environment. This is a standard diagram of the 3 E's as is often depicted by sustainable development proponents. social equity is a term that was coined by Karl Marx. Equity of sustainable development means that there must be equity between people within a country, between people of different countries, between different generations of people, and between people and nature or the environment, and that's the most important. Sustainable development looks at resources in a new light, and in particular, it targets private ownership of property, especially land, fossil fuels, which is often equated to their carbon footprint, and water, which is often looked at in view of the water footprint. Land. Under sustainable development, land cannot be treated as an ordinary asset controlled by individuals. Private land ownership is also a principal instrument of accumulation and concentration of wealth, and therefore contributes to social injustice. Public control of land use is therefore indispensable, and this is according to item number 10, the UN Agenda on the Habitat 1 Conference 1976. Current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class, and they're speaking particularly of the Western world, involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, home and workplace air conditioning, and suburban housing are not sustainable under sustainable development theory. A shift is necessary, which will require a vast strengthening of the multilateral system, including the United Nations. This was a statement made by Maurice Strong in his opening speech at the 1992 UN Conference on Environment and Development. The Global Water Footprint Standard was developed through a joint effort of the Water Footprint Network, its partners and scientists at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. It has garnered international support from major companies, policyholders, NGOs, and scientists as an important step towards solving the world's ever-increasing water problem. The standard is contained in the Water Footprint Assessment Manual. This is the face sheet for the assessment manual. It says the Water Footprint Assessment Manual is its title, and underneath that really is the important issue, and that is setting the global standard. That's really what your focus should be. It's an attempt to set a global standard. They go on to say, fresh water is increasingly becoming a global resource driven by growing international trade in water-intensive commodities. Apart from regional markets, there are also global markets for water-intensive goods such as crop and livestock products, natural fibers, and bioenergy. And again, this is from the Water Footprint Assessment Manual. It harkens back to Maurice's strong 1992 statement, high meat intake is not sustainable. So what can we tell about their theory of water? Water is a global resource, such as a fossil fuel and land. It requires governance in a manner that is sustainable and equitable, as they define equitable, from the standpoint of the environment, social equity, and world economics, the 3 E's. There's a need to be global governance of water. There is a need to be global governance of water resources so that they are controlled and used in a fashion that complies with principles of sustainable development. To accomplish this, we must have a global standard for water usage. Again, they're stressing a global ruling mechanism to cover the use of water. They go on. Interventions in water systems are necessary to meet the needs of society in the widest sense and in order to be able to face the challenges of all kinds of global changes, e.g. climate change, land use change, etc. same logic applies to all resources: food, fuel, land, water. Food security. Commonly, the concept of food security is defined as both physical and economic access to food that meets people's dietary needs as well as their food preferences. In many countries, the health problems relate to dietary excess are an ever-increasing threat. And this is from the UN's World Health Organization. Recently, Michelle Obama announced a program to end what she calls the American plague of childhood obesity. She says, quote, "We all know the numbers. I mean, 1 in 3 kids are overweight or obese. We're spending $150 billion a year treating obesity-related illnesses." She's not talking about just kids there. She goes on, "So we know this is a problem and there's a lot at stake." The government is getting involved in controlling our food. Again, New York City passed a trans fat ban in 2008. In 2010, they passed a salt ban. And in 2012, New York City passed a ban on sugar drinks over 16 ounces. Again, it's the regulation of food as they deem to be best for us. In a recent newsletter from the USDA, they made a suggestion that their employees should decrease their carbon footprint by eating a meat-free lunch once a week. And it went on and said, quote, "One simple way to reduce your environmental impact while dining at our cafeteria is to participate in Meatless Mondays, an initiative. This international effort, as the name implies, encourages people not to eat meat on Mondays." And again, it's put out by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Following a complaint by the Cattlemen's Association, Kansas Republican Senator Jerry Moran called on the Agriculture Secretary, Tom Vilsack, to clarify his comments. Senator Moran said, "Never in my life would I have expected the USDA to be opposed to farmers and ranchers." Moran said in a statement, "American farmers and ranchers deserve a USDA that will pursue supportive policies rather than seek their future or further harm." It's really interesting because Senator Moran has been in Congress since 1996, and he's voted for numerous farm bills and other legislation that has promoted sustainable development, which is exactly where Meatless Mondays come from. He has authorized the spending of hundreds of millions of dollars on flatulence studies on cattle, all related to sustainable development and limiting the meat intake. When the UN talks about food security or water security, what they're talking about is security equals governance, and governance equals control. Next, we're going to talk about the red flag words and entities that you should look out for. These are terms that indicate that there's sustainable development going on. And we have a handout that's going to have a longer sheet, but let's just talk about a couple or run down a couple of the terms. Agenda 21, Council of Government, Comprehensive Planning, Economic Development, especially if it's in association with healthcare in some manner, Equitable Development, Green Anything, Energy, Industry, Jobs, or Building, Leadership Training, Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is a term of art under federal statute, Sustainable Anything, Agriculture, Communities, Regional Councils, Regional Planning Organizations, Smart Anything, Grid, Smart Pros, Smart Roads, Smart Meter, Social Entrepreneurship, Social Equity or Justice, Underserved Community, Visioning, and Walkable Communities, all signal that you're dealing with sustainable development. A Metropolitan Planning Organization is, as I said, a term of art under federal regulation, and it's a mechanism for setting up regionalism. NPOs are federally mandated, but they're not mandated for states, and like the conferences of government, are the instrument for restructuring American government. They're setting up an infrastructure for a new economic system based on public-private partnerships to replace free enterprise. Regionalism promotes a Soviet-style council that develops policies and is then rubber-stamped by elected officials with no meaningful public oversight. Ultimately, the policies will be determined from the top down. American regionalism is the instrument used to advance the globalist goals of political restructure, to implement a step-by-step approach to the abolition of private property, to promote the relocation of people from rural areas to smart growth urban centers, and to conscript public-private partners and mandate community volunteerism. Regional governance is a layer or layers of government run by nameless, faceless, and usually ruthless appointed bureaucrats who are insulated from the election process and therefore accountable only to those who appoint them. Oftentimes, they are elected officers that are appointed, so they're not elected to the regional organization that are appointed there, even though they may be elected to a different governmental body. Political regionalism is the antithesis of representative government. Regionalism restructures or reinvents the operation of American government by destroying traditional political boundaries such as county lines and ushers in transformed systems of governance that ultimately abolish private property and the rights of the individual. And remember, governance is controlled by rules and regulation versus government. Pennsylvania's global award-winning governor, Tom Ridge, in the Intelligencer Journal in 1996, said of local government that, quote, geographic borders once held sacred have become undeniably artificial. Artificial borders, political, not geographic. The maps seen are to keep us lulled to sleep. The centerpiece of the Obama administration's anti-suburban plan is called the Sustainable Communities Initiative, and it is set to recommend redistributive policies as well as transportation development plans designed to undercut America's suburban, again, to concentrate population into urban, densely packed centers. Planning is the socialist trademark. This is a statement made by a socialist in the Communist Party's daily world newspaper. We in the U.S. have no regional government and no comprehensive regional planning to speak of. Regional government and planning remain concepts our urban scholars and planners, including the American Planning Association, have long advocated in vain. In socialist countries, metropolitan regions enjoy metropolitan regional government and comprehensive planning. The economic and functional efficiencies and social benefits that comprehensive national, regional, and city planning make possible in socialistic societies explain the Soviet Union's enormous and rapid economic social progress. Now we want to talk about sustainable development as it relates in particular to Kansas. Again, we're going to talk a bit about the history, the organizations that are promoting it, the government agencies that are promoting it, politicians that are promoting it, and the actual sustainable developmental organizations. Okay, organizations that are promoting sustainable development in Kansas. The Rural Policy Research Institute out of the University of Kansas at Kansas City is involved in several projects in Kansas. Burns and McDowell, an over 100-year-old private engineering firm located in Kansas City, Missouri, and known internationally for its involvement in sustainable development implementation, is also involved in several projects in Kansas. The United Nations Environmental Program is indirectly involved. The Kansas Health Foundation is directly involved in sustainable development, including sustainable medicine. One of its creations, the Kansas Leadership Center is involved in several sustainable development projects in Kansas. We also have the American Planning Association, the Kansas chapter that's involved, and the Kansas Center for Community Economic Development, and the Kansas Center for Rural Initiatives. There are many other organizations involved in implementing sustainable development in Kansas. This just scratches the surface. Sustainable development by government entities promoting sustainable development. And here we see the logos of the major universities of Kansas, and we all think, oh my gosh, that can't possibly be. But let's look at the facts. The Kansas Board of Regents in 2010 passed a policy on sustainable development. It says decisions and investments aimed to promote sustainability or simultaneously advance economic vitality, ecological, environmental integrity, and social welfare. That's the 3 E's of sustainable development. And again, remember, it's a theory. This is an actual page from Pittsburgh State University. It asks, what is sustainability? In 1987, the Brundtland Commission of the United Nations defined sustainability as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. To become sustainable, we must find a balance between the 3 aspects. And again, you'll notice at the upper right-hand corner, they have the 3 intertwined circles that relate to the 3 E's. Again, here is Kansas State, a Kansas State website. Welcome to K-State's sustainability website. K-State has embarked on a path to pursue environmental, social, and economic sustainability in every major area of the university. Again, the 3 E's. These areas include students, curriculum, operation, research, and engagement, as well as a section about how to get involved. Oh no, not KU. Yeah, there we go. Right from their own webpage. And again, we have the intertwined circles. What is sustainability? Sustainability is generally defined as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. It's coming right out of the UN statement itself. It also requires that we do these things in a way that both promotes economic prosperity and ensures that all members of society are treated equally and with respect. Again, the 3 E's. Overall, sustainability is about everyone having access to resources needed to achieve a high quality of life without exceeding the capacity of our natural ecosystem. Again, the focus point, the baseline is the environment. It's about sustainability for the environment and subsistence for man. This is a preamble to Wichita State University. The Kansas Board of Regents adopted a sustainability policy at its meeting of October 15 through 16, 2008, which stated that the policies, practices, and programs of state universities governed by the Board of Regents should, when possible, embody approaches that reduce life cycle costs, more jargon from sustainable development, restore and maintain the functional natural system, and enhance human well-being. The point of this, the objective of this, is to inculcate the new students from the very beginning, from day one, about sustainable development. They are educating them on this socialist theory as if it was the truth. The Wichita State University goes on in their policy statement. It says the board policy defines sustainability as social efforts to meet the needs of present users without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Again, it's a direct quote from the statement of the United Nations on their sustainability theory. It goes on. Sustainability presumes that the planet's resources are finite and should be used conservatively, wisely, and equitably. Decisions and investments aimed to promote sustainability or simultaneously advance economic vitality, ecological integrity, and social welfare. Here's another one from Fort Hays University. This is a little bit more interesting, perhaps a little bit more radical. Fort Hays University is taking proactive steps in educating students to be globally competent citizens. That's part of the global citizens of the world that some of these socialists talk about. The 7 Revolutions explores the 7 major global trends trends, that will shape the world by 2025, including population. They're saying we have a population explosion, resource management, environmental stewardship, technological innovation, the development and dissemination of information and knowledge, economic integration, conflict, and governance. Okay, politicians that are promoting sustainable development in Kansas, our lead sustainability officer in Kansas is none other than our own Governor Brownback. He spoke at the 2011 and 2012 Kansas Rural Opportunities Conference, which promotes sustainability and sustainable communities. He spoke at the initial Together We Succeed conference in November of 2011. He budgeted $500,000 in his 2012 budget for Project 17. He began implementing Obamacare, which is sustainable medicine, in Kansas with his early innovator grant that he secured in December of 2010, even before it actually assumed the office. And he continues to implement as of March 2013. We have 4 Kansas legislators who helped organize Together We Succeed, the Project 17 organization. Those include Senator Pat Apple and Senator Jeff King. Also involved were Senator Marshall, who was retired by the grassroots in 2012, and Senator Umbarger, who was also retired by the grassroots in 2012. Okay, Sustainable Development Organizations. And these are the actual organizations that have been created that are part of the regional governance, and they're actually implementing the sustainability policies. Intrastate was the Regional Economic Area Partnership of South Central Kansas, or REAP-SCK. Together We Succeed Southeast Kansas Economic Improvement Initiative that is involved with the Project 17. The Flint Hills Regional Council, and they have a project called Frontier. That's going to be an enormous eco-region area that will extend from north central Kansas all the way into north central Oklahoma and be governed by a regional governance organization. The Kansas Food Policy Council, again, part of food security, which was a program initially devised by the United Nations. Southwest Kansas Regional Transportation Council, North Central Regional Planning Council, South Kansas Regional Planning Commission, and there are others within the state. And we actually have some that are regional, that are multi-state organizations. We have the Southeast Kansas Regional Planning Commission. Part of what it's involved in, again, is comprehensive planning, part of sustainable development, and setting up cooperative endeavors, regional governments. This particular organization serves 12 counties and 82 cities, again, overlapping, multi-jurisdictional. They have 60 representatives that are appointed to the Executive Committee and General Commission. That would include private and public elected people that are appointed. The interstate ones, the major ones that we have, are the Kansas City Regional Transit Alliance and the Mid-American Regional City, or what's called MARC, Council. And MARC's involved in everything from homeland security, transportation, comprehensive land planning, water planning. Okay, in conclusion, let's bring this all together. This is a diagram of one of the regional governance committees and the 4 entities that are primarily behind getting it launched. The next slide, we're going to see an expansion of just one of the 4 entities. And here we go. We're going to look at just the Burns and McDowell's, an engineering firm, and we see how it's connected up through the Global Reporting Initiative on up into sustainable development, and also to the Green Building Council, which is also related to sustainable development. The next slide is going to take it even broader and look at the connections between all 4 of the entities. So there you go. It shows the breadth and depth of these interrelationships. The Okay, this is based on some research we did at Sustainable Development in South Dakota. This just shows all the organizations involved in helping to support it through a funding mechanism that was going on in South Dakota. And this is organizations that were involved in Greenberg, Kansas. That's where the tornado leveled the town, that were involved in supplying or help funding the ECHO, what they call an ECHO home there, with the sustainable house. It's about a $350,000 house, ugly structure, but anyway. And these are the documents that you need to review and to request for review. We have another handout that gives more detailed information on this. Okay, questions to ask your public servants. We do have a handout of questions, some of them more detailed and technical. These are some real basic questions. Do you understand and support sustainable development? Will you protect property rights? Will you end sustainable development funding for schools? And that would include like the core curriculum. Do you know the Obamacare is sustainable development? Are you aware of what agreements exist between Kansas and the federal government as to sustainable development? And this is sort of an overview, sustainable development. The concept of sustainable development has become a dominant policy paradigm in recent years. It calls for policy action regarding our current lifestyle with its high resource depletion, decay of environment quality, and increasing socio-economic disparities. We're talking about social equity. At the same time, there is a shift in the interpretation of this concept from a global perspective to a meso perspective, i.e., local or regional level. It is within the local context that sustainability is beginning to make the jump from visionary, global scale thinking to concrete action. Okay, I appreciate all of you making it out to listen to this important presentation. These are the sites and links where you can look at this presentation again, or get a longer presentation, or get handouts, and how you can contact me. So if we can help in terms of helping you educate your elected officials, or do a presentation or seminar for your group or several groups, let us know. We'd be happy to do it. Thank you very much.